Good evening, everybody. We've got an interesting looking one-shot ahead of us, so let's begin this episode of FIM Fiction Roulette, a series where I go through the annals of FIM fiction, take a random story and a random chapter from within said story, if applicable, and read it aloud for all of you to hear. First off, get hyped for the Autumn Babby. MLP's won the elites of winter and summer and have won the spring Babby before, but never autumn, so let's go ahead and change that this year. And then, of course, go for Star 4, cause I didn't get a Tracy jersey last winter and I'm really regretting it. Now for the story, I'm quite intrigued. It doesn't give much info away in the intro, so the imagination can go wild with what the title truly means. And quite honestly, I'm so excited I don't want to give much speculation and accidentally ruin the surprise. I'd rather find out with you all along the journey together. So let's not waste any more time. As always, we'll start with the introduction and then head into our selected chapter. As there is only one, we will get the luxury of reading this story in its entirety. Without further ado, this is To Be an Earth Pony by Golden V.O. After a rather embracing tumble from his train, a lone pony is left to make the distance on hoof. There, amidst trees, he is approached by a mysterious pony. A pony that would guide him to reconnect with his people and gain a new perspective on Equestria proper. Art very kindly made for this fic by the talented Adder Hutt. Show him some love, will ya? And now onto the chapter of the Earth and Flora. A young earth pony stallion trod across the stone slab that lay over a stream, placed there by some pony long before. The sound of his hooves tapping the bridge reverberated through the woods around him. The sound swiftly faded into the brisk white fog where most trees hid. The pony took pause atop the makeshift bridge and let out a deep sigh. He'd lost track of just how far he'd wandered, and his legs grew weary. He may as well be walking in circles for all he knew. He resigned himself to this thought and took a rest where he stood. The stone was wet with dew from the cold winter air, but such things never bothered a hardy creature him. It would usually be such a perfect thing. The woods bathed in fog on a lovely winter's day. Everything was still, save for the water that rippled just below. However, he was blind to such majesty, for he was hopelessly, hopelessly lost. After a few moments, he found himself sprawled across his back, tail flitting side to side, in frustrated rumination. Why me? He pointed one hoof lazily at the white sky above and let it balance there. As he spoke, whispers of his breath could be seen escaping upwards. His focus pulled down from the sky to look at his plain, boring hoof, and he grunted, "Stupid thing." His limb fell back down to his side once more. The defeated stallion was a proud sort, but alone he was free to ramble. All I'd need is a pair of wings. A Pegasus could fly out of here in no time. Such ideas invaded his mind often. Or what about a horn? Some boffin from Canterlot must have made a pathfinding spell. Feeling rather cheated, he let out a loud, pained groan. Like every hoofstep before, his cries disappeared into the unfeeling forest. The stallion lay pondering his handicaps for a good time more, the temperature dropping further and further. Even earth ponies knew the brush in winter was a dangerous place to be. Then, suddenly, his ears flicked at the sound of shuffling leaves. In mere moments, he was standing alert once more, gazing deep into the miasma before him. However, it offered little answer. The stallion was about to write the noise off as nothing until a dark, blurry figure began to emerge from the mist. He readied himself, trying to dig his rear hooves in, but finding little purchase on the slippery slate. He waived that task, though, when the figure revealed itself. Stepping up to the edge of the bridge was a mare, a rather fair earth pony with a hazy blue coat that darkened towards the fetlocks. She wore a soft smile, eyes faintly hidden behind a long ash mane that swept behind the ear. As he looked closer, he could see the natural blue of her eyes and the charcoal freckles that dusted her face. Against the misty background, it was almost picturesque. a sight that threw that stallion off-kilter for the shortest of moments. "Hey, sorry about that, you spooked me fierce. I didn't expect to find any other pony out here. Thanks Celestia, I did, though," he explained, letting himself ease a little. "Oh, it's no bother. I didn't mean to dad or none." Her voice was naturally graceful, ending with a gentle giggle. "Where be my manners? I'm Cherry Coldfall." The stallion's goals were put aside for the shortest moment, and he tilted his head, looking rather puzzled. "Now what you be doin' way out here? The water nearly a-froze." She shook her head in mock disappointment. "You'll be ailin' by morn." He rattled his head clear and took a step towards the mare. "I wish I wasn't out here. This fog's gotten me lost. I've been wandering for hours." He allows himself a smile, though. "Do you know the way out of here? Somewhere I could get some cider, maybe?" He was only met with another, admittedly sweet, giggle. "Gwain for the cider, are ya? A girt stallion like you should be able to find it a mile off. You know the way." She smirked gaily. His smile quickly broke as he let out a groan. "Look, love, if I knew the way out, I wouldn't be discussing it with you now, would I?" He turns from her and starts down the path once more. "Could you please just lead me out of this Luna-forsaken place?" She hesitates, watching him trot off for a moment. "You don't?" Her brow furrows, and her tone, still soft, loses its jovial edge. "Surely you glean with me?" He stops in his tracks, turning on a dime to glare back at the mare. "And if you're going to help, at least stop talking like that. We're not at some pre-banishment Ren fair." He was calmer before she even showed up. Being lost in quiet was peaceful at least. Misery does not indeed love company, it seems. Coldfall just stood in shocked silence, the gentle breeze that moved her mane the only motion. After what felt like minutes, she began to trot forward and past the stallion. "I'll help you leave. Come, for the evening sets in." The next hour passed in painfully awkward silence. Not even the picturesque forest eased the tension that hovered above the two. The stallion had many questions that fluttered about his head, and occupied most of the time they walked. He'd look towards her as if to ask something, but he never did, just turning his eyes back towards the road that got even more worn. "I do apologize," Coldfall started suddenly. "I haven't spoken with a pony for many a moon." She didn't turn to face the stallion when he tried to glance over. She only looked away. Luckily for him, he's equestrian, and some odd-speaking ponies were not exactly the oddest thing he'd seen. So instead, he just nodded gently, continuing to plod along through the ever-darkening forest. "And please don't anger, but I must ask. Are you really so lost?" she asked again, quietly. He took a deep breath in, filling his lungs with cold, sobering air, then a deep breath out, exhaling a cloud that carried away the annoyance that had flared. "Yes. How do you know the way out, anyway? What are you doing out here?" She glanced about the forest and took in what little she could through the haze that trapped the two. Quickly her gaze meandered back to the stallion at her side. "I abide here, you could say. I often walk these woods. It's nice." She smiled again, and it was honest, small but genuine to the core, a private smile she reserved only for the talk of nature. "And no pony of our ilk needs a map out in the woods, right?" "I do, evidently," he responded dryly. It was fast, but he was already regretting talking with his guide again. "Annan, what schools be teaching earth ponies?" A moment of distress eked its way into her voice before. In a moment her eyes lit up and her smile doubled. "I must show you some of that." Despite the fog, despite the dense trees, roots, and slippery dew, she bounded off the path and through the brush. With little other option, the stallion behind is forced to follow. He couldn't see her, but he could hear her. It wasn't long before their run came to an end at the edge of a deep blue pond, shrouded in mist. It was surrounded by pansies and honeysuckle coloring the banks. All the while lush green grass and moss-cloaked pebbles glistened with dew. The air was rich with intoxicating petrichor, perfectly quiet but still radiating with life. Coldfall stood at the precipice of the water, looking over her whither as the stallion approached. "We're not far to go now, and I'm sure you can find the way now, if you'd sit for a spell." She turned to face the stallion fully now, who was standing watching a few paces from the water's edge. "We earth ponies be a special breed, of course." He opened his mouth as if to respond, but only silence followed. His rather sarcastic retort fell dead as he watched Coldfall approach. Every hoof step left a new budding flower in its wake, seemingly springing up in real time as if trodden in reverse. He'd seen growth magic before, but never one so effortless or fast. Even the petals themselves looked so much more colorful than usual. His less than subtle gawking did not go unnoticed. Coldfall wore that same peaceful smile again. "What if I said you did happen to know a ways about this forest? You just don't know that you know." In the quiet that followed, she softly held a hoof to her lips to preserve it. Then in a near whisper she continued, "Tell me you feel that too." The stallion shook his head, travel-worn mane flicking side to side. "Nothing but the wind." It was true. The thick fur upon his hide took the edge off, but the chill breeze still found its way into his ears and around his snout. She let out a velvety giggle into her hoof. After a short pause to think, she took another stride forward, advancing right into the stallion's space without a care in the world. Then she took one of his front hooves between her own in practiced delicacy and pushed it firmly down. "What do you feel now?" "You're all muddled, so focus. You feel my hooves. What else?" The mysterious ways of the mare did irk the stallion to begin with. However, her demure figure, soft but well-used hooves, enthusiastic smile, and clear magical talent won him over in the end. He figured he dug this far down and in for a penny for a pound. He focused, really trying to feel what she could be rambling about. Ignoring her touch, he wondered lower. "There's grass under me. It's scratchy, sort of," he stated with uncertainty. "Good, good," Coldfall said with poorly hidden glee. "And what you feel under that?" "Under?" He cautiously pushed his hoof down harder. The grass scratched back in kind and the soil caved a little. However, there was something else. Something like any other feeling. It wasn't sharp or dull, wet or dry, tingling or numb, but it was there. "Hey, now don't be pushing for it. Have it come to you." And he did just that, and the feeling in his hoof now was tenfold, almost overwhelming. Like taking shades off on a sunny day, it was a rush of sensation. "There's something under there. It's alive, but I don't—" "Be the roots," she said matter-of-factly. But the look on her face was one of pride. "Just the roots?" he responded. It was almost disappointing. She hummed the affirmative, squeezing his hoof just that wee bit tighter. "Just like how Pegasi can beat their wings and be arush with magic on the air, or how unicorn can know the magic we can't, and know it in their horns. Just feeling nature there, the magic of life itself. Now have a go." She then released his limb and took a step back. At first there was nothing. It was like every day, just the usual touch against his frog. Then, with a deep breath and some focus, he tried not to touch, but to feel like she urged before. Subtle to begin with, but that same vibrant sensation started to stimulate his front hoof and work its way up his leg. All he had to do was listen, and the grass talked, telling his story of the intricate root network below. Coldfall watched on with pride, like watching a foal take their first steps. "Don't move your hooves none. Have a go toward me voice," she whispered, as if not to break his focus. It took him too long to parse what she meant, but then it clicked. To trot towards her would be to feel the grass in, but as above, so below. He felt out the roots as his hoof, and tried to probe forward. letting the plants ahead speak through the ones before. The overwhelming sensation was magical and rather fun, so he continued out towards the mare. Then, just as he could sense the flowers near where he stood, the trail stopped. When he glanced up to see the issue, Coldfall only stood with a smirk. At her front was a gash through the dirt she evidently had kicked up. "I think you be a natural." The stallion mirrored that smirk before letting out a hearty chuckle. "It's something else, that's for sure." After the novelty started to fade, his face tightened a little in thought. Seeing the look on his face, she took a wild guess as to its meaning. "You be finding life now so you can find where it ain't, right?" Pause for effect. "Like a farmer's drawing ways, ponies' houses?" He didn't need to respond to that with words, only an attempt. This time he closed his eyes and listened to the flora once again. It took time to become truly present. Stood there in the woods with the wind gently blowing his mane and tail aside. That time he got around the gash in the dirt and made it to the flowers. It was hard for him to explain, but they sounded different than the grass. Every plant was so vibrantly unique to one another. The tree's presence in the magical network was overwhelming, those lumbering hunks of ancient life whose roots explore endlessly. It was indeed endless in front, so he tried sweeping his search right and left, and all around. His snout scrunched up in focus as he tried to speak with his rear hooves and listen in kind. With every limb connected, every sensation in the woods felt so real, so close and tangible. Even with his eyes closed, he wasn't missing the forest for the trees. He felt like the forest. It was fun. That was until it stopped, and all he could feel was swaths of little roots and tiny leaves. It was the background noise of grass, so quiet in comparison to the song of the wild woods. Only an open plain could leave such a sensation, one whose paths would no doubt lead home. His meditations stopped, and his eyes opened with renewed resolve. When he tried to tell the mysterious mare of his success, all he caught was the sight of her pale flank disappearing into the brush, tail trailing along behind. He had been following her for a while now, and he knew he was gaining ground. Every time he stopped to scry again, he could sense the grass being rhythmically depressed up ahead with each fall of a pony's hoofsteps. This game of cat and mouse continued for a while, and they both knew that soon they would run out of woodland. When he finally reached the elusive mare, she wasn't where he expected. He came across quite the large rocky outcropping upon which Coldfall stood. She looked up from atop the cliff and waved in a way that was unfairly cute. She almost looked smug. The outcrop itself was streaked with ivy, and a few more hardy plants sprouted from its surface. That was the only real texture to its smooth walls, making any attempt to climb a challenge. When he went around the obstacle, she called down for him to wait. "How's about you come right up?" she called from the top, her head poking over the precipice. Her loose mane hung overhead and framed her face, her ashy mane backlit by the slowly setting sun. Then she started to push her weight forward, moving further over and over the edge. The moment she began to tumble down, her front legs stepped off into the air. Instead of rolling head over flank, her hoof found purchase on one of the rock-dwelling plants. It somehow held her weight perfectly. Naturally, the rather headstrong stallion took that as a challenge. He reasoned that if he could pull off the scrying, he could pull off that. With a mighty huff, he dashed forward, kicking up dirt with his sudden gallop. With practiced ease, he kicked off the ground and made contact with the rock. One more buck on the slippery vertical surface boosted him a little further skyward. He was sure he'd make it to the same patch of plant life, but it was not to be, and he started to grind back down the stone's surface. In his panic, he reached out for one of the trails of ivy by his side. When his hoof came into contact with it, he could suddenly feel all of it, just like before when pathfinding, but this was instant, unconscious. With a distressed curse, he squeezed his eyes closed and waited for the impact, but it never came. And he could still sense the length of the ivy. But it was stronger, closer. When he dared to look, he was dangling with the plant coiled around his hoof many times, holding him firm. "All right," Coldfall said from her perch. Yeah, I think I am." he replied. It started unsure, but slowly grew into a sense of confidence. His face dropped back into one of focus, and he stood against the wall, still suspended on his makeshift rope. A wave of doubt washed across his face as he looked up at the distance left to climb. You've got it. I know that well. Like a unicorn thinks a way about their problems, and a Pegasus flies for a different way about it, we keeps a firm upper lip and rough it. 'Tis an easy thing, just try again. Then he carefully cut loose and started for a small patch of pink flowers that bloomed from a tiny crag. In doing so, he tried to work his newly found magic, like a musician playing a new piece. The flowers responded, and soon he felt the soft bed of petals that his hoof now rested upon. He cautiously put some weight down, and they met that force, enough for the heavy stallion to pull himself up with ease. The rest of the climb went easy. Only a few strides later he had clambered to the top. All was well, bar the scuffs across his coat from the near miss before. Once he threw a foreleg over the top, Coldfall happily helped him mantle the final stretch, grabbing his forelegs and pulling him up. She was surprisingly strong. A silent thank you was given, and they continued on their way. Soon the trees gave way to a well-trodden path. Just down the road, the trees broke, and the remains of the sun shone freely onto the field at its end. He sighed resolutely and gave one final look to Coldfall. Well, end of the road. Thank you. For helping me out here, I guess. Mainly for the help with these things. He struck a hoof against the path a few times. Aye, 's what I do. Always right to help a fellow earth pony find their roots. Coldfall took a moment to find the words before she let out a small sigh. Suppose I'll be going, then. The confidence she had while talking about her craft had waned now, and she idly scratched a hoof in the dirt. I'll swing by with some cider sometime, eh? Won't have any trouble finding you here now. He gave a knowing smile before saying his final goodbye and trundling off down the path. Celestia's sun was just creeping below the horizon now, and the cold was setting in. The sky was stained a deep rust red, and it bathed the clear field with its hue. It was freeing, for he knew it wouldn't be long till he found a sign pointing home. There was just one more obstacle, a time-worn fence that needed hopping, a clear line between the wild and the tame. As he took his final steps out of the canopy's shade, he took one last glance back down the path. Coldfall was gone. A sign was tied to the fence with a now rotting cord. It read, Welcome to Coldfall Woods, protected land since 1500 BCE. The years passed by quickly, and they so often do, and the stallion found himself resting at home by the fire in the early evening. His ears perked to the sound of the front door opening, and a set of tiny hooves trotting on floorboards. Hey, Squirt, how was school? Author's note, G5 spoilers. As I was writing this, the new trailer for G5's Tell Your Tale released, and in a twist of fate, they just so happened to finally show off Earth Pony magic in a way that's actually front, center, and seemingly vital to the plot. Just so you know, I started writing this beforehand because I wanted to explore the important but invisible magic of G4 Equestria. Thanks for reading. Anywho, Golden VO. I like the idea of Earth Ponies having that natural form of magic. Not like the blatant horn magic or walking on clouds after a fly, but something a bit more subtle, under the surface. I feel like maybe even the communing with ancestors could be a part of the Earth Pony's power. The trope of a ghost from long ago helping someone in need who doesn't realize they're a ghost until the very end is pretty fun. Haven't seen it in a while, so I give it a pass. There were several lines of accent that were a bit hard to parse, so if I mistook any of those, I'm sorry about that. I read it like Southern, so that's what I did. I guess it was supposed to be ye olde English, but I usually associate that with lots more enunciation than with a country drawl. So I'm not too sure on how they wanted that read exactly. As a side note, BCE just feels too human. Instead, it should be like before Nightmare Moon, or maybe like several ages, before the sisters, during the reign, after Nightmare Moon, and then after the return of Luna. Or to simplify it, probably just before the sisters' rule and after their coronation. BC obviously doesn't work, unless they want to read it as before Celestia, maybe? Back to the story though, I was not disappointed. I just adored how vivid the world felt. It was like I was there and could feel that cold fog and the roots under the soil. And the characters and dialogue were a blast to read as well. I wonder about that afterword, about the little foal. Does that allude to them getting together? Like, it's got to be, right? Because there's no other real reason to give that information other than maybe letting us know that he just, survived? And I felt it would have been better to have him outside and in nature, and feel the foal coming through the roots, to show that he maintains that magic outside of the forest. So I guess my question for you, my dear viewers, is what do you think that afterword meant? Do you think it meant that he got with the ghost? I kinda hope so. This was To Be an Earth Pony. Thank you, Golden VO, for writing such a wonderful story. The link will be in the description below. And thank you, listeners, for joining me on this exciting adventure. This is Open Air, signing off. But don't worry, I'll be back soon with another FIM Fiction Roulette.